Arlen Voss looked up at the pewter-colored ceiling of the Galactic Tribunal, trying to decide if it reminded him more of a particularly uninspired office building or the inside of a particularly pissed-off toaster. Either way, it seemed hell-bent on making him feel small, insignificant, and likely to burn his fingers if he got too close. He adjusted the collar of his dress uniform, which, in the grand tradition of bureaucratic fashion, was both itchy and entirely impractical. "Hey, Voss," whispered a voice behind him, carrying the sort of mockery that only a fellow Earthling could manage in a room full of aliens. It was Jenna, fellow delegate and expert at making light of situations that warranted more than a few sleepless nights. "You ready to defend our little dirtball to the universe?" "Ready as a turkey volunteering for Thanksgiving," Arlen muttered back, eyes fixed on the assembly gathering. Hundreds of species, each more bizarre than the last, filled the vast chamber, their murmurs like the unsettling hum of a hive, or maybe just a really enthusiastic fan convention. At the head of the massive room sat Xylar, the enigmatic alien prosecutor with a face that only a mother, or a really committed cryptozoologist, could love. He was a gelatinous mass of what could best be described as sentient tapioca, with tendrils and pseudopods that writhed in too many directions at once. There was something unnervingly cheerful about the way he oozed into his seat, as if this trial was just a delightful little hobby, like knitting or genocide. "This tribunal will now hear the case against Earth," Xylar declared, his voice somehow managing to be both oily and brittle, like someone had taught a funeral director to do stand-up comedy. "The charges: unauthorized terraforming and ecological destruction on a galactic scale." Jenna leaned in, whispering, "So basically, we're on trial for gardening." "Yeah," Arlen replied, "except instead of roses, it's planetary ecosystems, and instead of pruning shears, we used nuclear reactors." Xylar's gelatinous form quivered with something like glee. "The evidence will show that humans, in their infinite wisdom, decided to rearrange the galaxy like a particularly enthusiastic interior decorator. Planets stripped bare, ecosystems mutilated, all in the name of what you quaintly call progress." Arlen raised a finger. "Objection?" The tribunal, a collection of beings that looked like the cantina scene from a discount space opera, paused, collectively bemused. "On what grounds?" asked Xylar, with the air of a teacher who'd caught a student trying to eat the class hamster. "On the grounds that you're comparing us to decorators. Have you seen Earth lately?" Arlen shot back. "We're lucky if our cities look like they weren't planned by a schizophrenic octopus." A ripple of laughter, or something approximating it, passed through the tribunal. The laughter, however, was quickly smothered by the collective glares of those who took space justice seriously, which seemed to be everyone except the humans present. "We will proceed," Xylar continued, a hint of irritation leaking into his voice, like a faulty coffee maker. "The Earth representatives will be allowed to present their case before we pass judgment." "Wonderful," Arlen said under his breath, already regretting not having a stronger drink before this. "Nothing like a little cosmic performance review to start the day." Jenna patted him on the back, which was more comforting than it had any right to be. "Cheer up, Voss. If we fail, at least we won't have to live with the consequences." He chuckled darkly. "Yeah, nothing like a good existential threat to put things in perspective." As the tribunal settled in, Arlen took a deep breath, inwardly cursing whoever thought it was a good idea to send him, an ex-diplomat with a knack for sarcasm and a questionable understanding of alien law, to represent Earth's interests. "Our first witness," Xylar announced, "is the esteemed Dr. Catharl from the Planetary Preservation Society." A being that resembled a cross between a beach ball and a particularly pompous snow globe floated to the center of the room, its transparent exterior filled with swirling gases and what Arlen could only hope were friendly microbes. Dr. Catharl's voice was high and reedy, like a mouse trying out for an opera. "The Planetary Preservation Society has documented numerous instances of Earth-originated destruction. This is not merely a matter of changing climates or altering landscapes. Entire biospheres have been eradicated." "Sounds like one hell of a vacation spot," Jenna whispered. "Beaches and genocide all inclusive." Arlen bit back a laugh. "Yeah, visit Earth, where we make our own enemies." Xylar's pseudopods wobbled menacingly. "Does the Earth delegation wish to respond?" Arlen nodded, stepping forward, trying to project the kind of confidence he hadn't felt since he managed to negotiate a peace treaty between two warring factions of office workers over the last donut. "Ladies, gentlemen, and whatever else we have here," he began, earning a few chuckles and a lot more glares. I'd like to remind everyone that humanity is very new to this whole intergalactic community thing. We didn't mean to ruin any planets. We just got a bit carried away with our exploration. Exploration? Xylar echoed, his voice dripping with disbelief. You call the annihilation of ecosystems exploration? Well, Arlen said, scratching the back of his neck, in our defense, most of our explorers were people who couldn't even find their car keys on the best of days. More laughter, tinged with a slightly manic edge, rippled through the room. Xylar's face, or whatever could be considered its face, remained impassive. Perhaps we should explore the concept of responsibility. Voss shrugged. Responsibility's a slippery thing, isn't it? Like trying to hold a bar of soap made from melted-down politician promises. Xylar gestured, and a holographic display flickered to life, showing a series of devastated planets. These worlds were once teeming with life. Now, thanks to humanity, they have been reduced to barren wastelands. Jenna leaned over. Looks like my ex's apartment after I left, she whispered. Arlen nodded. Yeah, I think I dated that planet once. The tribunal shifted, a collective rustle of limbs and tentacles, as if settling in for a long and potentially unsatisfying meal. The stakes were high, and humanity's fate teetered on the edge of this cosmic balance, a fact that seemed less daunting with each sarcastic quip. Xylar's attention returned to Arlen, the alien's pseudopods curling with intent. If humans wish to remain part of this galactic community, they must change their ways. Arlen nodded. That's fair. We'll start by not terraforming any more planets this week. It's a start. Another ripple of laughter, nervously eager to disguise the very real tension that filled the chamber like a bad smell. Jenna squeezed Arlen's shoulder. You've got this. Just remember, if we fail, at least we go down making the best damn jokes. Arlen grinned, meeting Xylar's gaze, or what passed for it. One question, Xylar. You ever screw up a recipe so badly it sets the kitchen on fire and somehow creates a new species of mold? That's humanity in a nutshell. We're the galactic screw-up, but we're working on it. Xylar paused, the tribunal silent as they awaited his response. Very well, Earthling. We shall reconvene tomorrow to hear further arguments. As the assembly dispersed, Arlen let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Well, that went better than expected. Jenna shot him a wry smile. Yeah, nobody tried to eat us or vaporize us as an example. I'd call it a win. Arlen nodded, already feeling the weight of tomorrow's proceedings looming like a particularly vengeful hangover. Let's hope we've still got a planet to go home to. He turned to leave, the tribunal's murmur fading behind him, but not before one last thought slipped out, quiet and half-hopeful. Because I'd really hate to have to ask for directions back. As they exited, Arlen couldn't shake the feeling that out there among the stars, humanity's future was being decided by those who saw Earth as either a pet project gone wrong or a cosmic joke. And maybe, just maybe, they were right. The tribunal hall felt like a sauna for mismatched extraterrestrial oddities, each one more grotesquely fascinating than the last. Arlen Voss, stuck in his itchy uniform, stood at the center of this circus of cosmic judgment, praying to whatever deity might be listening that he'd survive this ordeal without missing any body parts. Or his mind, for that matter. Beside him, Jenna stood with the poise of someone who'd seen it all and didn't give a damn anymore. So, what's our defense strategy? Jenna asked, voice drenched in sarcasm. Charisma or more of your patented wit? Both, Arlen replied. They just haven't invented a better defense mechanism for hopeless situations yet. Xylar, the sentient tapioca alien, was in the midst of hurling more accusations at Earth. Well, hurling might be a strong word. More like oozing accusations with the enthusiasm of a bureaucrat who just discovered a new form to fill out. We will now present the evidence, Xylar announced, his gelatinous mass quivering with something akin to enthusiasm, which was probably about as close to smiling as his kind got. The holographic display flickered to life again. This time, it wasn't just barren planets being showcased like a real estate agent's worst nightmare. It was detailed footage of ecosystems being stripped away like paint from an old fence. Trees vaporizing, oceans boiling, and wildlife. Well, not doing so hot. It was like watching a nature documentary directed by a sadistic nihilist. Arlen swallowed. Well, isn't that a lovely slideshow from our last family vacation? He muttered, trying to suppress the rising tide of panic. Jenna leaned in, whispering, I think my grandmother did less damage with her holiday fruitcake. That stuff was a weapon of mass indigestion, Arlen replied, forcing a grin. But yeah, this kind of trumps that. Xylar's pseudopods gestured dramatically at the footage, like an overeager tour guide. Here we observe the planet Epsilon 7, once a vibrant world of diverse ecosystems. Now, thanks to humanity's unchecked ambition, it resembles little more than cosmic rubble. Arlen cleared his throat. To be fair, we thought Epsilon 7 was uninhabited. And you decided to rectify that by making sure no one could ever inhabit it again? Xylar's voice was cool, with all the warmth of a snake oil salesman. Something like that, Arlen said, feeling sweat bead under his collar. We had no idea our exploratory tactics were akin to planetary extermination. A ripple of something akin to a murmur ran through the assembly. It was unnerving how judgmental a bunch of aliens could look, especially when some of them didn't even have discernible faces. The humans have claimed ignorance, Xylar continued, the disapproval palpable. But ignorance is no defense against the consequences of their actions. Arlen raised a hand. We're not pleading ignorance, we're pleading stupidity. It's a subtle distinction, but important. We Earthlings are a bit like interstellar toddlers, chewing on power cables and pressing all the wrong buttons. Jenna chimed in with a chuckle. Yeah, if you want something broken, give it to a human. We'll do it creatively. The tribunal's attention turned back to Xylar, who sighed in a way that suggested he was about as done with humanity as a vegan in a butcher shop. The tribunal requires more than humorous deflections, Earthlings. Arlen nodded. Look, we're not denying the mess we've made. But we're trying to clean it up. Slowly, like trying to put toothpaste back in the tube while riding a unicycle. Xylar's quivering mass seemed to exude skepticism. Your attempts at reparations are noted. However, we must consider the scale of the devastation. Right, Arlen replied, thinking furiously. So, how about we focus on what we've done right? The tribunal's murmuring escalated slightly, as if discussing whether this human was just exceptionally bold or mind-numbingly naive. Jenna stepped forward, her eyes sparkling with mischief. We did invent the internet. And pizza delivery. Pretty sure those are of galactic importance. Xylar's tone was as dry as a Martian summer. Perhaps less pizza and more planetary preservation would serve you better. Arlen raised his hands in a mock show of peace. Hey, we also did some good things. Like discovering penicillin, and rock and roll, and, space travel. Eventually, Xylar seemed to consider this, or at least his gelatinous form wobbled thoughtfully. The tribunal will take these arguments under advisement. Great, Arlen said, and just so we're clear, we really are working on not blowing up more planets. Jenna added, yeah, we're running out of places anyway. The tribunal's attention was diverted to the projected footage again, this time highlighting Earth's more positive contributions. It was a short clip, but they had to play to their strengths. As the tribunal debated amongst themselves, Arlen and Jenna retreated to their designated corner of the chamber, where they could whisper without alien ears eavesdropping. So, what's the plan, Voss? Jenna asked, her voice a curious mix of cynicism and encouragement. Stall, distract, and hope they don't notice we're making it up as we go, Arlen replied, glancing at the tribunal. And maybe, just maybe, we can convince them we're not complete idiots. Sounds like our usual Monday morning meeting, Jenna quipped. Exactly, Arlen said, looking back at Xylar as he once again took the stage. But with more tentacles and less coffee. Xylar's voice cut through the chatter like a knife through, well, something more substantial than his own form. The tribunal will reconvene tomorrow. Further evidence and arguments will be reviewed. As the aliens began to disperse, Arlen felt a brief surge of relief. It was short-lived, of course, as relief tends to be in the face of impending doom. But it was a start. Jenna punched his shoulder lightly. Hey, we survived the first round. That's something. Arlen nodded, letting out a breath. Yeah, just a few more rounds to go. Piece of cake. Or a slow dance through a minefield, Jenna joked, as they turned to leave the tribunal hall. Outside, the vastness of space stretched infinitely, a reminder of just how small and insignificant they really were in the grand scheme of things. But if there was one thing humanity excelled at, it was punching above its weight class. As they walked away, Arlen couldn't help but wonder what tomorrow would bring. More accusations, probably. More frantic attempts at defense, definitely. And hopefully, just maybe, a chance to prove that humans were worth saving. Jenna looked over at him, reading his thoughts in that unsettlingly accurate way she always did. Hey, Voss, you know if we pull this off, we're going down in history, right? He snorted. Yeah, as the idiots who almost got Earth evicted from the galaxy. Better than being the idiots who actually got us evicted, Jenna said with a grin. True enough, Arlen conceded. Let's just hope the galaxy's got a soft spot for underdogs. As they exited into the docking bay, the weight of their responsibility settled back on Arlen's shoulders, heavy, uncomfortable, but not altogether unbearable. As long as he had Jenna by his side and some semblance of a plan, he was willing to fight. Because if there was one thing humans were good at, it was getting knocked down and stubbornly getting back up again. Tomorrow would be another battle, likely full of as much humor and desperation as today's. But Arlen felt a spark of hope, not overwhelming, but enough to keep him going. After all, hope was just optimism's snarky cousin, and Arlen could use all the family he could get. With a nod to Jenna, he set off toward their quarters, ready to plan for the next round of intergalactic negotiations. Because sometimes, all you could do was laugh in the face of doom and hope it didn't laugh back louder. The docking bay was as welcoming as a concrete pillow, which, Arlen mused, was still cozier than the tribunal. He and Jenna trudged along the cold metal corridor, the echo of their footsteps a somber march to what could very well be Earth's last defense. We better come up with something good by tomorrow, Jenna said, her voice laced with the kind of optimism only found in people who've seen the worst and decided it wasn't quite bad enough yet. Oh, sure, just need to find the galactic equivalent of an undo button. Maybe they keep it next to the self-destruct switch, Arlen replied, scanning the corridor for any sign of inspiration or, failing that, a decent coffee machine. Their quarters were as cramped as expected, 2 bunks, a table, and a window overlooking the endless void. It was the kind of place that screamed, temporary, though Arlen hoped it wouldn't become permanent in the afterlife sense. We need a plan, Jenna reiterated, falling into one of the chairs like it had personally offended her. Something more than just winging it and praying your sarcasm doesn't backfire. Arlen nodded, rubbing his temples as if he could massage the right idea out of his skull. We'll need to dissect the evidence, find any flaws or inconsistencies. The universe loves nothing more than a good loophole. Jenna gave him a sidelong glance. Think there's something fishy in the evidence? Besides this, I mean. Call it a gut feeling, Arlen said, pulling a tablet from the table's clutches and flipping through recorded tribunal footage. Or maybe I'm just desperate enough to start seeing conspiracies. They spent the next few hours going over Xylar's accusations with a fine-tooth comb. It was tedious work, like counting the holes in a colander, but Arlen had a knack for spotting the little details everyone else missed. A talent he wished was more marketable outside of intergalactic legal drama. Wait, Jenna said, pointing at the holograph of Epsilon 7's destruction, looping on the screen like a cosmic snuff film. Pause it right there. Arlen squinted at the frozen image. Looks like the same devastation as before. What am I missing? She tapped the screen, highlighting a section of the terrain. There, that's not a natural formation. See the pattern? It's too uniform. Arlen leaned closer, a smile creeping onto his face. It's artificial. Someone tampered with the footage. Unless the planet had a really organized tectonic shift. Jenna crossed her arms, pleased. Sabotage, maybe? Someone trying to frame us? Could be, Arlen said, considering the implications. But who would want to cook the books on Earth? Besides everyone. Xylar? Jenna suggested. He's got a vendetta the size of Jupiter. Maybe someone upstairs put him up to it. Possible, Arlen admitted, feeling the familiar buzz of hope for the first time in days. We need to bring this up tomorrow. But we'll have to be subtle. The tribunal's got a lot of ears and even more tentacles. Jenna snorted. Subtlety's not your forte, Voss. More like bull in a china shop diplomacy. I'll have you know I'm capable of great finesse, Arlen protested. When I'm not busy saving humanity's ass, that is. Well, Jenna smirked, let's hope your finesse is up to interstellar standards. Arlen stood, pacing the small room with barely contained energy. Assuming we can prove this, it might buy us some time. Meanwhile, Earth needs to rally. Show them what we're made of. Jenna rolled her eyes. And what's that? Misguided ambition and poor decision-making? Unity, Jenna, We're good at that when we're not busy tearing each other apart. If we can rally Earth's support, it'll show the Tribunal we're not just a bunch of cosmic misfits. They spent the rest of the night drafting messages to Earth, urging them to come together, to push back against the tide of universal disdain. It was a long shot, but it was all they had. The next morning, the Tribunal Hall was just as unwelcoming as before, a sauna of judgmental alien oddities. Xylar was already in position, his gelatinous form quivering with a smugness that made Arlen's skin crawl. "Let's see if we can't wipe that smile off his, whatever he calls that face," Jenna whispered, standing ready for the day's proceedings. Arlen nodded, stepping forward. "Before we proceed, I'd like to address some discrepancies in the evidence presented." Xylar's pseudopods twitched in what might have been irritation. The evidence was meticulously gathered and verified. "Yeah, well, it seems someone's been playing fast and loose with reality," Arlen shot back, pulling up the footage Jenna had flagged. "This section here doesn't quite match with natural planetary disruptions, does it?" The Tribunal murmured amongst themselves while Xylar's form wobbled uncertainly. "What are you implying?" "I'm implying that someone's been doctoring the footage to make us look worse than we already are. And believe me, that's a feat." Jenna chimed in. "We may be a bunch of reckless planet hoppers, but we're not this good at screwing up. There's a method to this madness, and it's not ours." The Tribunal's attention was focused on the evidence now, expressions ranging from incredulous to contemplative. Arlen allowed himself a small smile, feeling the first taste of victory on his tongue. "We demand a thorough investigation into these discrepancies," Arlen declared, leaning into the moment. "Unless, of course, the Tribunal's content with the Kangaroo Court." The Tribunal buzzed like a hive disturbed, the prospect of a scandal too juicy to ignore. Xylar, for all his bluster, seemed momentarily at a loss for words, his gelatinous form rippling in silent frustration. "The Tribunal will consider this new evidence," Xylar finally conceded, though it sounded like he was swallowing glass. "Proceedings will be adjourned until further analysis is completed." As the Tribunal dispersed, Jenna nudged Arlen, grinning. "Nice work, Voss. You might just make a diplomat out of yourself yet." "Don't jinx it," Arlen said, though he couldn't help but feel a swell of confidence. "Now we just need Earth to come through." The messages they'd sent were still bouncing across the void to Earth, a plea for unity in a time when division was the easier road. Arlen could only hope humanity's penchant for rising to the occasion was still as strong as ever. As they made their way back to their quarters, Arlen's comm lit up with a message alert. He stopped, glancing at Jenna, who raised an eyebrow. "Think it's Earth? Or maybe Xylar sending hate mail?" Arlen tapped the comm, the small screen flashing to life with a series of video clips. Faces from around the world, each one offering support, solidarity, and defiance in equal measure. Messages of hope, resilience, and the stubborn refusal to give up. Jenna peered over his shoulder, a slow smile spreading. "Looks like Earth's not ready to roll over and get kicked out of the galaxy just yet." Arlen nodded, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the Tribunal's sauna-like atmosphere. "We might just pull this off, Jenna." The video messages were punctuated with footage of protests, rallies, and gatherings. People holding signs, chanting slogans, and generally proving that if there was one thing humans excelled at besides destruction, it was coming together when the chips were down. "Looks like we've got a fighting chance," Jenna said, her tone surprisingly earnest. "And here I was, all set to start learning Martian." Arlen chuckled. "Mars might be a nice place to retire, but I'd rather not be forced into it." They watched the messages in silence, the solidarity of Earth's citizens a balm against the weight of the Tribunal's judgment. It was a reminder that for all their flaws, humanity had a knack for unity in the face of adversity. The next day promised new challenges, fresh accusations, and the ongoing struggle to clear Earth's name. But with the support of their planet and the possibility of exposing a conspiracy, Arlen felt more prepared than ever to face the Tribunal again. As Arlen and Jenna settled in for the night, the weight of their task seemed lighter somehow, buoyed by the knowledge that they weren't alone in this fight. Humanity was behind them, stubborn and defiant as ever, a fact that gave Arlen the courage to meet the next day with renewed determination. "Hey, Voss," Jenna said, closing her eyes with a contented sigh. "Think maybe one day they'll make a movie about this?" Arlen smirked, turning off the lights and letting the darkness embrace them. "If we don't screw up, maybe they will." I just hope they pick a handsome actor to play me. Jenna chuckled, the sound a comforting reminder of their shared camaraderie. Good night, Arlen. See you in the morning for another round of alien diplomacy. Good night, Jenna, Arlen replied, closing his eyes and letting sleep take him, filled with the hope that tomorrow would bring them closer to victory. Or at least a chance to fight another day. The tribunal hall was buzzing with anticipation, like a swarm of intergalactic mosquitoes eager to take a bite out of Earth's reputation. Arlen Voss stood amidst the cacophony of alien chatter, his itchy uniform a constant reminder that diplomacy was as uncomfortable as it was necessary. Jenna was beside him, her optimism sticking out like a sore thumb in a place where hope was usually hung out to dry. Xylar, the sentient tapioca with a vendetta as thick as his gelatinous form, was at the center of the attention, ready to hurl more accusations like cosmic grenades. Arlen felt a sour taste in his mouth, like he'd bitten into a rotten apple. Or maybe it was the fear of what Xylar would bring to the table next. As the tribunal settled, Xylar's form shimmered with self-importance. Esteemed members of the tribunal, he began, oozing confidence, the evidence against Earth's reckless terraforming continues to mount. Arlen leaned over to Jenna, whispering, I bet he's got a degree in dramatic pauses. Jenna snorted softly, nudging him to pay attention. Let's see what he pulls out of his hat now. The holographic display flickered to life, projecting new footage of planetary ruination that made the last scenes look like amateur hour. Mountains crumbled, forests ignited, oceans boiled like they were in a rush to evaporate. It was a galactic apocalypse on fast forward. This, Xylar declared, pointing a pseudopod at the screen, is undeniable proof of Earth's destructive tendencies. Arlen squinted at the footage, the wheels in his head turning so fast they might spin off. Jenna, do you see what I see? She nodded, her eyes narrowed. Yeah, looks like the editor got a little too enthusiastic with the disaster effects. Exactly, it's too neat. Like someone said, let's make this catastrophe as picturesque as possible. Arlen crossed his arms, his mind racing for a way to exploit this cinematic overindulgence. While the tribunal engaged in its customary bout of speculative murmuring, Arlen's comm buzzed discreetly. He glanced at it, a message blinking with the urgency of a caffeinated meerkat. Yara's got something, he whispered to Jenna, a thrill of cautious hope threading through his words. Yara, the rogue AI you've been tinkering with? You sure she's not going to go full Skynet on us? Arlen flashed a grin. Nah, she's more of a HAL with a sense of humor. And right now, she's our best chance at finding the skeletons in this closet. They slipped out of the tribunal hall, the eyes of the aliens following them with suspicion and mild interest. The cold metal corridors were a welcome reprieve from the sauna of judgment they'd just left, though the echo of their footsteps served as a reminder that they were far from sneaky. In their cramped quarters, Arlen tapped into the tablet, connecting to Yara's network. The AI's avatar, a decidedly sarcastic representation of a human face, appeared on screen. Arlen, Jenna, Yara greeted, her digital voice laced with a bemused tone. I've been analyzing the new footage. It's more doctored than a celebrity's profile picture. Tell us something we don't know, Arlen replied, half joking, half exasperated. Yara's face shifted into a smirk. Patience, human. I've traced the manipulation back to a remote server in the nebular cluster. A location known for its black market data services. Apparently, someone's paying good credits to make Earth look like the galaxy's worst tenant. Jenna frowned. So, we've got a puppet master pulling the strings. But who? That's the million-credit question, Arlen said, his brow furrowing. Anyone on that server list you can reach out to, Yara? Already done, Yara replied, her tone turning wry. I've left a little digital breadcrumb trail for them to follow. With any luck, they'll think it's a good idea to respond. Arlen felt a flicker of excitement amidst the stress. Great, keep us posted. Always do, Yara said, her image flickering out. Jenna crossed her arms, leaning against the table. So, what's the play, Voss? We can't just wave this around the tribunal like a magic wand. Not yet, Arlen agreed. We need more dirt, something tangible to show we're not just grasping at straws. Otherwise, Xylar will chew us up and spit us out. Jenna sighed, rubbing her temples. Right, more digging, less hoping for a miracle. Arlen chuckled dryly. Welcome to diplomacy. Where hope goes to die, and cynicism thrives. They spent what felt like eons combing through data, looking for anything that might hint at who was pulling the strings. Every now and then, Arlen would catch Jenna's eye, both of them sharing a silent understanding that this was less about saving Earth's skin and more about proving they weren't the cosmic idiots everyone seemed to think they were. Hours later, a soft chime signaled an incoming message from Yara. Arlen, practically bouncing with anticipation, opened it. Got a nibble, Yara announced, her voice a bit smug. Someone from the server's network reached out. They're interested in striking a deal. Figures, Jenna muttered. Everyone's got a price. Can you get us a meet? Arlen asked, already mentally preparing for whatever shady negotiation was about to go down. Working on it, Yara replied. I'll let you know the moment I have something concrete. Arlen leaned back in his chair, the weight of the universe pressing down on him like an overzealous chiropractor. Let's hope they're in a talking mood. Or at least not in a shooting mood, Jenna added dryly. True to her word, Yara pinged them within an hour, the details of a clandestine meet at an out-of-the-way docking bay appearing on the screen. Looks like a trap, Jenna noted, eyeing the location with skepticism. Probably is, Arlen replied, standing up and stretching. But we don't have the luxury of being picky. The docking bay was just as welcoming as Arlen remembered. It had all the charm of a concrete pillow, and the ambiance of a place where hopes and dreams went to die. They approached the designated meeting spot with cautious optimism, or maybe just caution. An alien figure, wrapped in a cloak that probably saw more action than Arlen hoped to in his lifetime, emerged from the shadows. Its face was obscured, but the outline told Arlen enough. This was someone who thrived in the margins of society. Arlen Voss? The figure asked, its voice a low rasp that suggested it gargled with gravel. That's me, Arlen replied, resisting the urge to add, unfortunately. I've got the data you're looking for, the alien said, holding up a small device. But it'll cost you. Of course it will, Jenna murmured. Can't get free lunch in the universe. Arlen nodded, stepping forward. Name your price. The alien considered them for a moment, calculating. I need a favor. Call it insurance. Go on, Arlen prompted, though he already felt the headache coming on. There's an item I need from the tribunal's evidence vault. Something they've confiscated. You get it for me, and the data's yours. Jenna groaned softly. We're doing side quests now? Sounds like a fair trade, Arlen said, ignoring Jenna's comment. But we need to see proof you've got what you say you do. The alien hesitated, then handed over the device. Arlen plugged it into his tablet, Yara immediately analyzing the contents. Looks legit, Yara confirmed. Enough to make this worth the risk. Arlen nodded, handing the device back. We'll get your item, but if you're playing us. I'm not, the alien cut in, a hint of impatience in its tone. Meet back here once it's done. As they walked back to their quarters, Jenna shot Arlen a sideways glance. You sure about this? Not even a little, Arlen admitted, a wry smile tugging at his lips. But if we're going to clear Earth's name, we've got to play dirty sometimes. Here's hoping the universe doesn't kick us in the teeth for it, Jenna replied, though her tone was more resigned than hopeful. They spent the next day plotting how to get into the evidence vault, a task that was about as simple as defusing a bomb with a blindfold on. Security was tight, and the consequences of getting caught were severe. But Arlen had always been a fan of the high-stakes game, even if his luck usually ran out at the worst possible moment. As they went over the plan for the umpteenth time, Arlen caught Jenna's eye. If we pull this off, drinks are on me. Better be, Jenna said, a faint smirk on her lips. I'm gonna need a stiff one after this. The heist, or strategic acquisition, as Arlen preferred to call it, was set to go down at night, when tribunal activity was at its lowest. They donned their stealthiest attire, which consisted mostly of looking like they belonged there and hoping no one thought twice about it. Slipping through the corridors, they reached the entrance to the evidence vault. Arlen's heart pounded in his chest like it was trying to escape. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. Ready? He whispered. Not really, but that's never stopped us before, Jenna replied. With Yara's help, disabling the security systems was like playing a very intricate video game, one where the stakes were their lives and the future of Earth. But they managed it, slipping inside with barely a whisper of noise. The vault was a treasure trove of illicit goods, each item more bizarre than the last. Arlen couldn't help but marvel at the sheer audacity of what some species considered contraband. There, Jenna pointed to a small, unassuming box tucked away on a shelf. Arlen grabbed it, careful not to disturb anything else. Let's get out of here before someone notices. As they retraced their steps, Arlen couldn't shake the feeling they were being watched. But with nothing concrete to go on, they pressed forward, every sound amplified in the tense silence. They made it back to their quarters without incident, adrenaline coursing through them like a live wire. Arlen collapsed onto his bunk, the box clutched tightly in his hands. "We might actually pull this off," Jenna said, though her tone was cautious, as if afraid to jinx their fragile success. "Don't say that," Arlen replied, glancing at the box. "We've still got to make the exchange and get that data. Then we'll see if this whole mess has a silver lining." "Small miracles," Jenna agreed, settling into her own bunk. "How do you sleep at night with all this weighing on you?" "Easy," Arlen said, letting his eyes close. "I pretend I'm not about to be vaporized by an angry gelatinous blob." Jenna chuckled, a comforting sound amidst the chaos. "Good night, Arlen." "Good night, Jenna," he replied, slipping into a fitful sleep where hopes and fears danced a grim tango in his dreams. Tomorrow promised another day of alien diplomacy and daring escapades, but for now, he'd take what rest he could get. Arlen Voss awoke from a dream where he was chased by an angry blob of sentient jello, only to find himself facing the very real prospect of Earth's impending doom. He lay in his bunk, staring at the ceiling, which, like everything in the Galactic Tribunal, was painted in the dreary shade of bureaucratic gray. It was a color that made you feel like filling out paperwork just by looking at it. "Morning, sunshine," Jenna mumbled from her bunk, her hair pointing in every direction except the one that involved looking presentable. "Did you sleep?" Arlen asked, although he already knew the answer. Jenna had the kind of dark circles under her eyes that made raccoons look well rested. "Like a baby," she replied, stretching her arms. "If babies woke up every hour with existential dread." "Ah, the usual then." They both knew today was critical. The trial was nearing its verdict, and Earth's fate seemed as bleak as a solar eclipse. Arlen pulled out his tablet, the screen flickering to life with a holographic list of evidence against Earth. Each line felt like a personal insult. "They really rolled out the red carpet of doom for us," Arlen muttered. Jenna peered over his shoulder. "That's not just a list, it's a thesis on why Earth sucks." "Yeah, it's like reading our own obituary," Arlen quipped, though the humor was as thin as the air outside their vessel. "Yara, give me some good news." Yara's hologram materialized, her expression, as always, hovering between mockery and mild amusement. "The good news is you're not dead yet. Thanks for that, Mother Teresa. Anything useful?" "Well, the bad news is Xylar's closing argument is deadlier than a black hole with a superiority complex. They're really going for the jugular." Arlen sighed. "Of course they are. If they win, they get to shove that in our faces until the heat death of the universe. Not to mention," Jenna added, "Earth becomes a pariah, the cosmic whipping boy for every interstellar neighborhood association." Arlen's mind rewound to the last few days, meeting shady aliens, sneaking into evidence vaults, and trying to negotiate peace with a sentient desert. It wasn't exactly the diplomatic dream he'd signed up for. But then, nothing ever was. "All right," he declared, sitting up. "Enough moping. Let's review what we've got." Jenna rolled her eyes. "Yeah, that should take a whole 5 minutes." But they both knew it was more than that. Every scrap of data they had was a potential lifeline, a thread that could unravel Xylar's accusations if they could just find the right angle. "Yara, display the new data," Arlen ordered. The screen filled with more doctored footage, falsified documents, and fabricated testimonies than a political scandal on steroids. It was a tapestry of lies that would make a con artist weep with envy. "How the hell are we supposed to counter this?" Jenna asked, exasperated. "With style and aplomb," Arlen replied, though his confidence was more forced than genuine. They spent hours cross-referencing, fact-checking, and generally doing everything short of a rain dance to catch a break. But as the hours ticked by, hope dwindled like air in a punctured spacesuit. "There's gotta be something we're missing," Jenna mused aloud, rubbing the back of her neck. "Yeah, a miracle," Arlen replied, not even trying to hide the sarcasm. The chime of an incoming message startled them both. Yara flickered back. "Incoming message from the tribunal. They've accelerated the schedule, closing statements in 12 hours. Of course they have, Arlen said. Why let us have a moment to breathe? Breathing is overrated, Jenna noted dryly. With the clock ticking louder than a death watch beetle, Arlen decided it was time to pull out all the stops, whatever that meant. Desperation was an excellent motivator when mixed with a hint of insanity. I need to talk to someone, Arlen announced, standing abruptly. Jenna raised an eyebrow. Who exactly? We're not exactly drowning in friends here. You'll see. Keep digging through that data, and don't stop until your eyes bleed. Jenna saluted him with mock severity. Aye, Captain. Arlen made his way through the cold metal corridors of the tribunal, the echo of his footsteps a constant reminder of his loneliness in this bureaucratic behemoth. Truth was, he was heading to see the one person who might be able to help, if he could get her to listen. He arrived at a small office labeled Diplomatic Liaison. Inside, a woman sat behind a desk cluttered with more paperwork than anyone should legally be allowed to accumulate. Her name was Mira, and she had the weary look of someone who'd seen too many dreams die under fluorescent lighting. Arlen, she said, looking up with a mixture of surprise and annoyance. What are you doing here? Trying to save Earth from becoming the punchline of a cosmic joke, he replied, trying for casual and landing somewhere around manic. Mira leaned back, crossing her arms. And you think I can help? I'm hoping. You've got connections, right? You must have heard something. She sighed, running a hand through her hair. You know the tribunal's strict about leaks. But, I did hear something interesting. Arlen leaned in, his interest piqued. Go on. There's a rumor about Xylar's evidence. Something about a witness who might not be as credible as they claim. Arlen felt a flicker of hope. Witness? Who? Can't say for sure, Mira replied, frustration evident. But if I were you, I'd look into Xylar's star witness a bit more closely. Thanks, Mira, Arlen said, genuinely grateful. Don't thank me yet, she warned. You're up against the biggest players in the galaxy. This could all be smoke. Smoke's just fire waiting to happen, Arlen said, already formulating a plan. He turned to leave, pausing briefly. And Mira? Yeah? Thanks for not just slamming the door in my face. She cracked a small smile. You've always been a stubborn bastard, Arlen. I'd hate to see that go to waste. Arlen hurried back to the quarters, where Jenna was still glued to the tablet. I've got a lead, he announced. Anything that doesn't involve us getting vaporized? Possibly. Xylar's star witness might be full of it. We need to dig into their background. Right, Jenna said, perking up. Let's find out if our gelatinous friend's star witness has a few skeletons in their closet. Or whatever passes for a closet in space. With renewed vigor, they dove into the data, focusing their efforts on dissecting the credibility of Xylar's shining testimony. If they could discredit this witness, it might give them the leverage to tilt the scales. The hours flew by, filled with rapid typing, hushed voices, and the occasional exclamation of, gotcha. It was less a methodical investigation and more like throwing darts at a board while blindfolded, but it was something. Then, just as things were looking bleak, Yara chimed in. I've found something. The star witness, one Greylax from the Krontic system, has a history of legal disputes and falsified testimonies. Looks like they've been bought off in the past. Arlen grinned, feeling like he'd just been handed a lifeline. And Xylar didn't see fit to mention that little detail? Looks like they conveniently forgot, Yara replied with a digital smirk. This could be our in, Jenna said, her eyes lighting up for the first time in hours. Yeah, it might just be the crack we need to shatter Xylar's whole case, Arlen agreed, feeling hope bubble up despite himself. Let's get this ready for the tribunal. They spent the next few hours compiling their findings, preparing for the showdown that would determine Earth's fate. The evidence was shaky, but it was better than nothing. It was a slim reed of hope in an ocean of despair. As they prepared to leave for the tribunal, Arlen stopped Jenna. Hey, thanks for sticking with me through all this. Don't mention it, Jenna replied, her voice uncharacteristically gentle. Besides, if we save Earth, drinks are on you, remember? Arlen chuckled. Yeah, but if we don't, the next round's on me in the afterlife. They made their way to the tribunal hall, the weight of the moment pressing down on them. The pewter-colored ceiling loomed above, a reminder of the cold judgment that awaited. The hall was already buzzing with anticipation, the various alien species gathered in their designated areas. Xylar looked particularly smug, a fact that Arlen found irritatingly motivating. As they took their places, Arlen felt a mix of dread and determination. It was their darkest hour, but if there was one thing humans were good at, it was finding a way to scrape by when everything seemed lost. Jenna leaned over, whispering, "Ready to rock this circus?" Arlen took a deep breath, nodding. "Let's give them a show they won't forget." With that, the tribunal came to order, the judges settling into their seats with the gravitas of galactic overlords. Arlen stood, his heart pounding like a drumbeat of destiny. It was time to make their case. Time to prove that Earth was more than just a cosmic blunder. As Arlen looked around the room, he saw humanity reflected in the eyes of his fellow delegates, hopeful, defiant, and unyielding. He took the stand, clearing his throat, ready to fight for Earth, for better or worse. Because even in the darkest hour, there was always a flicker of light. And if anyone could turn that flicker into a flame, it was Arlen Voss, diplomat, cynic, and stubborn human extraordinaire. Arlen Voss knew that cosmic justice was a cruel joke, but even he had to admit it had a twisted sense of humor. As he stood in the tribunal hall, ready to unleash his latest revelation, he could only hope this punchline would land well. The judges were seated, their expressions as stony as the asteroid belt. Xylar was there too, looking smugger than a cat with a canary. That was about to change, or so he hoped. Jenna slipped him a quick nod. "Ready to unravel the universe's worst plot twist?" "Raring to," Arlen replied, his smile more wolfish than confident. "Just don't choke. Remember, we've only got one shot at this," Jenna whispered, shrugging as if that was easy to forget. "Oh, I'm fully aware," Arlen said, stepping up to the podium. His heart drummed a frantic beat against his ribs, a reminder that this was as close to a last stand as you got without actual dying involved. "Esteemed members of the tribunal," he started, struggling to keep his voice steady, "I come before you to present evidence that could turn this trial on its head." "Get on with it," the lead judge grumbled, looking at its wristwatch, if a gelatinous blob of sentience needed such a thing. Yeah, impatience is a virtue," Arlen muttered, trying not to roll his eyes. "Let's talk about Xylar's star witness, shall we?" Xylar's eyes narrowed, its confidence flickering like a faulty neon sign. "What about Greylax? Their testimony is beyond reproach." "Sure, if you squint hard enough," Arlen shot back, letting a smirk tug at his lips. He glanced at Jenna, who tapped her wrist where a watch might be if she wore one. "Time to get to the point. Yara, display the evidence," Arlen commanded. The air shimmered, and Yara's holographic avatar appeared, her expression as snarky as ever. "Coming right up, Captain," she said, waving a digital hand as the screen filled with documents and dossiers that painted Greylax in a less than flattering light. "Here's the thing," Arlen continued, pointing at the screen. "Greylax's history is a tapestry of deceit, false testimonies, and legal troubles. They're about as credible as a politician's promise." Xylar made a sound that could have been a growl or just its version of a groan. "This is ridiculous." "Oh, I haven't even gotten to the best part," Arlen said, enjoying this more than he should. "Turns out, Greylax was paid off. Evidence suggests they have a vested interest in seeing Earth take the fall." A murmur rippled through the tribunal hall, the noise growing like a swelling tide. Arlen basked in the chaos for a heartbeat before pressing his advantage. "Now, let's address the terraforming incident itself," he said, shifting gears. "The destruction of EPSILON-7? Not Earth's fault." "Oh, please," Xylar scoffed, although its confidence had noticeably diminished. "You expect us to believe that?" "I don't expect you to do anything but listen," Arlen replied, his gaze steady. "Yara, the other files, please." "Certainly," Yara said, flicking her wrist dramatically. The screen changed again, this time displaying technical schematics and convoluted jargon that could only mean one thing to Arlen. "This," Arlen said, gesturing at the screen like a magician revealing his grand finale, "is a malfunction report from an alien terraforming device. Not one of ours. This baby went haywire all on its own." The tribunal's collective eyebrows raised, if they had them. Xylar's expression was priceless, a blend of shock and indignation that Arlen wished he could bottle and sell. "Explain," the lead judge demanded, glaring at Arlen with eyes like dark pits. "I'd be delighted," Arlen said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Turns out, someone, definitely not us, set up a device to terraform EPSILON-7. Problem is, it malfunctioned, spiraling out of control and causing the ecological nightmare you've all seen. How convenient, Xylar sneered, trying to regain some semblance of composure. Convenience has nothing to do with it, Arlen shot back. This is about facts. Earth didn't authorize or initiate any terraforming. We're just unlucky enough to be caught in the crossfire. Luckiest, Jenna added under her breath, her tone as dry as a Martian summer. The tribunal leaned in, sensing the shift in the tide. Arlen could feel it too. A weightlifting, a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, humanity wasn't screwed after all. This new evidence, the lead judge intoned, its voice echoing through the hall, will require further examination. We shall reconvene after a thorough review. Arlen nodded, stepping back from the podium. His heart was still racing, but now it was tempered with relief. They'd done it. They'd created a crack in Xylar's case wide enough to drive a starcruiser through. As the tribunal adjourned, Arlen and Jenna exchanged a look of triumph, one that spoke volumes without a single word. Well, that went better than expected, Jenna said as they headed back to their quarters, her stride lighter than it had been in days. Yeah, let's just hope it sticks, Arlen replied, his voice laced with exhaustion and a hint of disbelief. We're not out of the woods yet. You think they'll buy it? Jenna asked, her skepticism evident. Depends on how much they want to see Xylar sweat, Arlen said with a wry smile. And if there's one thing I've learned about the universe, it's that everyone loves a good fall from grace. Back in their cramped quarters, they collapsed onto the bunks, the weight of their efforts settling over them like a lead blanket. Yara flickered into view, her holographic form taking a seat on the table. Well done, Arlen. I almost believed you knew what you were doing. Thanks for the vote of confidence, Arlen replied, chuckling despite himself. I guess we'll find out soon enough. As they lay there, the reality of what they'd accomplished began to sink in. It wasn't a victory, not yet, but it was a start. They'd bought Earth some time, if nothing else. Remind me never to take up law, Jenna said, staring at the ceiling. I don't think I'm cut out for this kind of stress. Agreed, Arlen replied, closing his eyes and letting the tension seep from his body. From now on, I'm sticking to things I'm good at. Like sarcasm. That's the spirit, Jenna said, her voice drifting as sleep began to claim them both. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Arlen allowed himself to relax. Tomorrow was another battle, another chance to fight for humanity's future. But for now, he was content to rest, knowing they'd given it their all. And as he drifted off, he couldn't help but think of the universe's twisted sense of justice. Because if there was one thing Arlen Voss understood, it was that in the grand scheme of things, a little chaos was sometimes all you needed to set things right. Arlen Voss stood before the Galactic Tribunal, his heart pounding like a prisoner's tattoo against the wall of a cell. The room was so silent you could hear an electron drop. The judges, a collection of species so diverse it looked like a bad joke setup, stared at him with the collective interest of a cat watching a goldfish. Arlen licked his lips, casting a quick glance at Jenna, who nodded, silently urging him to stop stalling and start talking. Ladies, gentlemen, and gelatinous blobs of the court, he began, his voice echoing off the cold, bureaucratic gray walls. I'm here to present some evidence that's going to make you rethink putting Earth on trial for the ruination of EPSILON-7. Get on with it, the lead judge said, its voice a low rumble that seemed to come from the deepest pits of wherever it was from. Arlen imagined it had a real skill for shutting up loud parties. Right, straight to the point, then. We've been accused of unauthorized terraforming, an ecological sin so grievous it's got us all standing here looking like we just lost a game of interstellar Monopoly. Arlen tapped his tablet, and the screen flared to life with Yara's holographic avatar. She floated there with an expression that could only be described as digital disdain. Evening, Yara, Arlen said cheerily. Evening, Captain Dramatic, Yara replied, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Ready to save the day? I sure hope so, Arlen muttered under his breath. He looked back at the judges, their eyes, or equivalent visual organs, locked on him. Now, let's talk about the supposed evidence Xylar presented. Xylar, sitting smugly at its station, gave a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. Which part? The one where your planet plays cosmic gardener without a permit? Arlen ignored the jab, focusing on the image Yara displayed, Schematics so complex they looked like a spaghetti monster had a nervous breakdown. These are the plans for the terraforming device allegedly responsible for Epsilon 7's creative remodeling. And I use allegedly with the kind of suspicion usually reserved for politicians and telemarketers. Xylar's expression faltered, ever so slightly. Arlen pressed on. This device, dear esteemed tribunal, is not of Earth origin. It's not even close. The design is more compatible with Farcan technology, which, as you might know, has a tendency to go haywire when left unsupervised. The tribunal murmured, a sound like 1,000 small waves lapping against a shore. Arlen could feel the shift in the room, the collective lean towards disbelief. It was a sweet, sweet sound. And who are these Farcans? The lead judge asked, its tone as dry as a desert moon. Ah, Farcans, Arlen said, smiling. Known for their big plans and bigger screw-ups. Their terraforming devices are essentially ticking cosmic time bombs. Xylar snorted, an unimpressive noise like a cat sharply exhaling. Nice story, but where's your proof? The smile Arlen gave was all teeth and no sincerity. Thanks for asking. He gestured to Yara, who conjured up a new set of images. Here we have transmission logs intercepted during the terraforming process. Notice the frequency? Classic Farcan, same as their last debacle on Nebula's edge. Grunts of recognition echoed through the hall. Even blobs in a legal setting had their gossip networks. I'm sure you'll find this quite enlightening, Arlen continued, savoring each word like a bite of the last piece of chocolate cake in the universe. Jenna leaned over, whispering, looks like it's working. Don't jinx it, Arlen whispered back. But he couldn't help the flicker of hope in his chest. Xylar was looking less like a smug cat and more like one caught in the rain. The lead judge turned to Xylar, its gaze heavy enough to crush lesser beings. Do you have a rebuttal, Xylar? For a moment, Xylar's confidence twisted like a wrung-out towel. This is preposterous. You would take the word of a human over solid evidence? Solid? Arlen arched an eyebrow. More like liquid, if you ask me. Slippery and hard to pin down. Xylar spluttered, but Arlen saw the downfall creeping in its eyes. The tribunal, however, was no longer Xylar's playground. They were listening, and they weren't happy about potentially being duped. Let's review the facts, Arlen said, his voice clear and sure. Earth didn't authorize this mess. We didn't have the tech, we didn't have the motive, and for goodness sake, we didn't have the time. We've been too busy trying not to blow ourselves up. That part's true, Jenna murmured with a grin, earning her a nudge from Arlen. The lead judge gestured again for silence, the room falling still. What do you propose, Mr. Voss? Arlen squared his shoulders, feeling the weight of Earth's fate pressing down like 1,000 expectations. I propose that we send a team to Epsilon 7 to dismantle this rogue equipment, learn from it, and prevent future incidents. Also, maybe get some better cosmic security measures. Because, let's face it, leaving terraforming devices lying around is just asking for trouble. The tribunal members exchanged glances, a silent communication that Arlen couldn't decipher but hoped was positive. He held his breath, waiting for their verdict. This new evidence will indeed require further scrutiny, the lead judge finally said. Its voice was formal, but there was a hint of concession in its tone. However, it appears that the charges against Earth may need to be reconsidered. Arlen let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. They'd done it. They'd cracked open the case, let light in, and now all that remained was for the tribunal to do the honorable thing. Xylar, meanwhile, looked like it had swallowed something unpleasant, its expression a mixture of anger and disbelief. This isn't over, Voss. Never said it was, Arlen replied, shrugging as if the universe's judgment was just another Tuesday for him. But it's a good start. The tribunal adjourned, their decision postponed until the evidence was thoroughly reviewed. Arlen and Jenna were left standing amidst the echoing silence of the hall, a silence heavy with implications and the promise of something better than annihilation. Well, that was fun, Jenna commented as they made their way back toward the cold metal corridor, the sound of their footsteps bouncing off the walls. Think they'll actually clear us? Who knows? Arlen replied, unable to keep the fatigue from his voice. But I've got to believe it's at least a possibility now. Back in their quarters, the cramped space felt a little less like a prison and more like a temporary refuge. Arlen dropped onto his bunk with a sigh, the tension leaving his body like air from a deflated balloon. Jenna took the opposite bunk, stretching out with a groan. You think Xylar will let this go? Doubtful. Arlen grinned despite himself. But that's tomorrow's problem. Today, we've given Earth a fighting chance. And I think we deserve a break. Yara flickered into view, her hologram settling onto the table. Nice work, Arlen. If I had fingers, I'd give you a round of applause. Great, now even the AI is sassy, Arlen chuckled, closing his eyes. What's the universe coming to? Whatever it is, let's hope it involves less interstellar courtroom drama, Jenna said, her voice drifting off as sleep claimed her. You know, Arlen mused aloud, if we make it through this, we should get a medal. Or a planet named after us. Or a really nice vacation, Yara suggested. Arlen snorted, the sound echoing softly in the small room. I'll take it. As exhaustion finally swept over him, Arlen let himself slip into slumber. For once, his dreams were filled not with the specter of Earth's potential demise but with possibilities, of what humanity could achieve if they were just given the chance. Arlen Voss lounged back in the docking bay chair, feet kicked up on the console like he owned the place, which he definitely didn't. The docking bay remained as welcoming as a tax audit, but for once, Arlen didn't care. Feels like we're finally seeing the other side of the asteroid belt, doesn't it? Jenna said, crossing her arms and leaning against the wall. Her voice was a blend of relief and disbelief, like she was still waiting for someone to jump out and yell, just kidding. Yeah, Arlen replied, staring at the dull ceiling. Feels like we've got a shot at not being wiped off the cosmic map. Always a nice change, Jenna said, a smirk tugging at her lips. You think this hero business comes with a decent paycheck? Arlen chuckled. If it does, I'm buying us matching space yachts. We can race them through asteroid fields and pretend we're the protagonists in a badly written space opera. Oh, the adventures we'll have, Jenna said, rolling her eyes. Dodging intergalactic tax collectors and repairing hull breaches with duct tape. Hey, duct tape's a miracle worker out here, Arlen shot back. Their banter was interrupted by the arrival of Xylar, who was scowling, an expression that seemed to require a surprising number of facial muscles. Enjoying your moment in the spotlight, Voss? Gotta take the wins where you find them, Xylar, Arlen said, shrugging. Even if it's in a place as drab as this. The alien glared at him, a practiced move that might have been more intimidating if Arlen hadn't spent the past few days facing the collective judgment of half the galaxy. Don't get too comfortable. The tribunal might have been swayed by your theatrics, but some of us know the truth. Yeah? Arlen said, leaning forward. And what truth is that? That humans can't be trusted, Xylar replied, its voice as cold as the vacuum of space. You'll slip up eventually, and when you do, we'll be there to remind everyone why Earth should have been left to rot. Looking forward to it, Arlen said with a grin that was all teeth and no warmth. But until that day comes, I'll enjoy being the galaxy's favorite underdog. Xylar turned and left, its departure as frosty as its demeanor. Jenna watched it go with a bemused expression. You know, I think I'm going to miss that charming personality. Yeah, right up there with space dysentery, Arlen agreed. He stood, stretching his arms over his head. Come on, let's blow this joint. I hear there's a party back on Earth in our honor. A party? Jenna raised an eyebrow. I thought humans celebrated by blowing things up? Depends on the celebration, Arlen said as they made their way down the corridor. This one's more about drinking and pretending we're not all just a bunch of idiotic apes dangling over the abyss. Sounds delightful, Jenna said dryly. Count me in. They boarded their ship, the small, battered vessel that had become as familiar as an old shoe, smelly, but comfortable. Arlen settled into the pilot's seat, the controls lighting up like a cheap amusement ride. Home sweet tin can, he muttered, flipping switches and hitting buttons with the casual familiarity of someone who fully expected the ship to explode at least once before they reached their destination. You know, this thing really is a piece of junk, Jenna said, eyeing the flickering dashboard. Think we could trade up for something that doesn't feel like it's one good kick away from disintegration? And lose all the charm? Arlen quipped. Nah. Where's the fun in that? Yara's holographic form flickered to life between them. I'd suggest you both strap in. With Arlen's flying, you might need it. Thanks for the vote of confidence, Yara, Arlen said with a smirk. Just doing my part, she replied, her digital face a picture of innocence that didn't suit her in the slightest. As they left the tribunal behind, The ship's engines roared louder than a politician at election time. Jenna relaxed in her seat, staring out at the pinpricks of stars that stretched across the void like freckles on the universe's face. So, Arlen began, breaking the comfortable silence. What do you think happens now? Same thing that always happens, Jenna replied. We get a pat on the back, maybe a shiny medal, and then it's back to being the galaxy's favorite scapegoats. Ever the optimist, Arlen said, shaking his head. Just a realist, Jenna corrected. But hey, at least we've got the chance to screw up another day. That's the spirit, Arlen said, grinning. Here's to humanity's glorious future, filled with mistakes, misadventures, and hopefully fewer interstellar courtrooms. The journey back to Earth was uneventful, a fact that Arlen appreciated more than he'd admit. It gave him time to reflect, which was never a good thing for someone with a talent for overthinking. Upon their arrival, Earth was exactly as they'd left it, chaotic, noisy, and somehow comforting in its familiarity. They were met with a reception better suited for celebrities or war heroes, which, Arlen supposed, they sort of were. Welcome back, a planetary official greeted them, his smile so wide it threatened to cut his head in half. You've done us a great service, and the world wants to thank you. Just doing our part to avoid planetary extinction, Jenna said with a casual shrug. Think we can get that vacation now? Arlen added, his voice only half joking. The official laughed, a hearty sound that was probably practiced for just such occasions. I'm sure we can arrange something. But first, there's a whole ceremony planned in your honor. Arlen shared a look with Jenna. Do we have to wear suits? He asked, mock horror in his voice. Formal attire is encouraged, the official replied. Great, I'll see if I can find something that doesn't itch, Arlen said with a resigned sigh. The ceremony was as grand as they'd feared, complete with speeches and accolades that made Arlen squirm in his too tight suit. He accepted the praise with the grace of a man trying not to trip over his own feet, which was a distinct possibility given the slippery stage. Jenna took it all in stride, her smile firmly in place as she shook hands and nodded at the appropriate moments. You know, she whispered to Arlen during one particularly long-winded speech, for people who love us so much, they sure do make it hard to stay awake. Just think of it as training, Arlen murmured back. For when we're old and listening to the younger generation's nonsense. Like we don't already have enough nonsense of our own, Jenna quipped, earning a soft laugh from Arlen. Finally, the ceremony drew to a close, leaving Arlen and Jenna to escape the limelight and find solace in the nearest bar. It was a dingy little place, tucked away from the pomp and circumstance, and Arlen felt more at home there than he had in the entire ceremony. To surviving, Jenna said, raising a glass of something that smelled like it could strip paint. To not screwing everything up, Arlen replied, clinking his glass against hers. They drank in silence for a while, the kind of silence that speaks volumes. Arlen watched the patrons come and go, each one a reminder that life continued, despite the odds. You think we did good? Jenna asked eventually, her voice soft and contemplative. Yeah, Arlen said, nodding. I think we did. The bartender, a grizzled old-timer with more wrinkles than a dehydrated prune, gave them a nod of approval. You kids did all right. Saved us all from a hell of a mess. Thanks, Arlen said, his voice a blend of pride and humility. As they left the bar, the stars were bright above, a reminder of the vastness they'd faced and the challenges still to come. Arlen looked up, feeling the weight of those distant lights like a comforting blanket. Ready for the next adventure? Jenna asked, her voice full of mischief. Arlen smiled, a genuine smile that came from somewhere deep inside. Always. And with that, they walked into the night, two humans against the universe, ready to face whatever came next. Because if there was one thing Arlen had learned, it was that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their technology or their intellect, but in their unyielding tenacity to keep pushing forward, no matter how dark the path might get. Here's to the unknown, Jenna said, her voice carrying the weight of 1,000 unsaid things. To the unknown, Arlen echoed, knowing that whatever the future held, they'd face it together, snark, sarcasm, and all.